On today's episode of the Agents to Owners podcast, I have a woman that needs literally no introduction, Dawnyel Smink with Canyonlands Insurance and CLI Select Agencies. She's involved in so many different things. In addition to running her own agency and running the select network of, I believe it's about 80 agencies now. She's involved in about 7 insurance councils, author of soon to be 3 books, 2 I know for sure. I don't know if the third is done yet. And she is the founder of Women in Insurance Sharing Empowerment, and probably many, many other things. But without further ado, welcome to the show, Dawnyel Smink.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to have a fun conversation with you because we always have one.
I am too. Thank you so much for being here. I know that you are very busy, so I certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us today. So like we always do, why don't you give us a quick backstory of how you found your way into the insurance space and bring us up to Canyonlands.
Sure. So I didn't grow up thinking that I would get into insurance. That wasn't even on my radar, but
Nobody.
I'm sure most of us can kind
Nope.
of relate to that.
Mike Crowley. That's the only one that I know of.
I know it's like maybe some of them they might have put it in their genetics, their DNA kind of thing, and then maybe. I was actually on the path to be an OBGYN, and then when I had my son, I ended up taking the good mom job and getting a degree in elementary education, but also because I really love teaching. So, I appreciated that. I'm like a forever learner. I'm that person that has a nightstand with like 50 books on it, and I'm reading, like a fiction book and then like a business book and, some type of personal book, like a mix of it all the time because my brain gets tired of one book. So I switch it off. And so like I've got this on cue thing. So I taught for a number of years, 6th grade. Very interesting grade to teach, but I love the curriculum. I got to teach about like Middle Ages, and I love Egypt, and the lit studies were really fun. I enjoyed that part of it, but I'm an entrepreneur at heart, so that part didn't fit me 100%. You're kind of capped where you are for your income, and innovation is not something necessarily that they were looking for in the school systems at the time. And so I had a moment that I was able to sit back and really think about what I wanted to do. And insurance fit really well with who I am as a person. So I could be an entrepreneur, I can educate, and I could also innovate. And so it fulfilled what I wanted on that side of it. But it also is, you have renewable income. Renewals are pretty awesome.
Yep.
So, and when you compared it to the other things that I felt I might be really good at, which was real estate and mortgages, I really felt like that was the path that I needed to go.
Okay. And so where did you jump into the insurance? You didn't, did you start independent or did you jump on the captive side?
I jumped on the captive side.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay.
I did that for a while, and then I found that it didn't fit who I was. I like problem solving for my clients and finding solutions that work for them, and not just trying to take a product and then forcing that product upon them. I was good at doing the captive side of it, but it just didn't fit like what I wanted to do long term. So a number of agents that were with the same captive had left and joined a group, which was CLI, with Ken Walters. And so I went to him and told him what I wanted to do. And he gave me the opportunity to be one of the agencies within the group back in 2004.
So and that's interesting. I didn't know that you had others that kind of led you to CLI, but I know, knowing you a little bit, I know that you wouldn't just jump into something probably without doing your due diligence. What drew you to CLI? What made that a good fit for you?
It really was Ken. You talk about WIISE. Another reason why I left being captive was when I like laid out my like PowerPoint presentation and my whole 2-year plan of trying to have another kid, it wasn't greeted with with excitement from my manager. In fact, it was like, good luck, and no one that's ever been in your position has ever made it after having a baby. So
Okay.
when I went to Ken,
Challenge accepted.
yeah, I was like, okay, so I'm going to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
Because I definitely wanted to have a kiddo with my husband. And so when I went to Ken, he said he liked that I was very confident and I had a direction and I knew where I wanted to go. And he told me that he's like, I believe that you're going to do everything that you said that you're going to. And he's like, I'd like to be a part of it. And so for me, that was a big part of it. Groups were a little different back then,
Yeah.
and um, it was also a contract that I knew was very fair.
Yeah.
It was the most like agent friendly contract you could have, and he did it because he truly knew that he wanted to help other agency owners have the opportunity to do what he had done since '98. So that's why I picked CLI.
And you took over the entire network 4 years after you joined? Is
Yep.
that about right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's, I mean, it sounds like, and even from when we talked previously, that this Ken saw a lot in you and believed in you in a lot, and really in a short period of time, because when you took
Mhm.
over, you were a young person. I think maybe in your early 30s, which
Mhm.
is that's that's a young age to take over an agency, let alone a network of people. Um, how I'm curious, how was that received by the rest of the network? You taking over at that point?
uh, I don't know. We had a close group,
Okay,
and at first, I think they were a little surprised, but I really wanted to change things for the better. And some of us kind of grew up together during those 4 years
okay,
on trying new things. Like, one of our agency owners that's still with us today, Tyler and I, we pushed being paperless and early. Like I was paperless
yeah,
in '04, right? And then like
wow,
testing DocuSign in '06. And so we had done some stuff together. I don't think I realized how young I was until later in life when
right,
I took it over, because
right.
I just wanted to go in there guns blazing and like, I'm like, hey, I created like a management site with my husband in my free time before I took it over that is web based, and like this is '08. Like there was no
Yeah,
web based type of thing that was going on. And I think I came in there um, probably a little bit more innovative than some of the agencies were ready for at that time, just because there wasn't the insure tech thing happening back in '08.
for
And
sure.
so, I think if looking backwards now, I would have I would have done it differently. I think I would have listened more, and that's what I've learned through the
Yeah,
years is listen more and then learn from it, and then you can work with the people that you're leading a little bit better. I just went in and said, "Here's my agenda, and this is what we're going to do," and then I just scared the shit out of them, basically. Because I think that's what I did. I'm like full in a china closet. Like I'm gonna totally disrupt all of this. And sometimes I think you have to pick your timing, and then
yeah.
you have to set the stage for what you want to do with leadership. And I did not know that back then.
You didn't, and you wouldn't have. You wouldn't have. And I was just, as you were talking and thinking where I was in '08, I for sure had big fat paper files that had no organization whatsoever, and we weren't using an e-signature at that point.
Mhm.
So, and especially in the insurance space, let alone, and I don't know what the makeup of agents of that network, but there. I'm going to venture a guess. The amount of agencies or agents that were paperless at that time, less than 2%.
Mhm.
I would guess. So for you to come in and say, this is how we're doing it, oh man, I bet that went over real well.
No.
Okay, that's great. I'd love to hear more about that sometime. But I think to the point of leadership, you don't know that. Like in your mind, you're thinking this is right. We need to do it. We just need to rip the Band-Aid off, and not really taking into consideration how other people look at it, or a viewpoint, or what that's going to do to their inner self. I would have did the same thing and been wrong. I mean, I would have been, because that's how I tended to do things like that way more like 10 years ago, which, as we learn, doesn't go over so well.
No.
So, and you touched on this a little bit about the CLI network. When you first described it to me, it seemed like a very unique contract and network within our agency. I think you described something that was very agent friendly. And to me, from what I heard, it's not just a network, but it's more of a community. Can you describe a little bit about the CLI network?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. You and I both participate in IAOA, and I feel like we were IAOA in a smaller way before there
Yeah.
was an IAOA. And I felt very fortunate that we had this tribe of like-minded agency owners that were there to help each other. And some of them were there to help me grow up and go like, hey, like I believe in you as a leader, and here's some stuff that you need to work on, and definitely some hard truths that I had to face and realize how I was coming across. And so they helped me with that stuff. So it wasn't just like I created this and then we created a culture where we can do that for each other. And I wasn't a part of that and open to it. I think we all did that together, and really having a council that we grew up together. And then we also created the thought of what if we had the leverage to innovate and do stuff differently than other groups. And that only came along like later. Like I'm going to tell you, like 10 years after I took it over. Okay. Like, and it wasn't, like I said, 10 years of Dawnyel, grow up kind of thing. Find out how to be a leader, do it all wrong, and then figure out how to do it better. And that's still a learning lesson. And then figuring out what was our why and where we wanted to go for the future. And so, Heather McDougall, my COO, I mean, we helped each other a lot figure out like what was CLI, not just this great tribe of people, but what were we going to do in the future? And so we created a road to 200, and know that road to 200 isn't something that we are going to get in like next year. I don't want that. I want to continue the tribe that we have. So it's, we take on about 20 agencies a year. We vet a whole bunch of agencies, and we're looking for people that have a like-minded mindset, that they can really grow with us, and we can do this together. And so that's really important to us. That started in 2019 was the road to 200. And like you said, we're getting really close to the 80 number. We had a couple retires. So sometimes they retire, then other agencies buy the book. And so it's a flux of it. So I don't have like a date. I have when we get to 200, Heather and I talk a lot about how awesome it's going to be, because on the road to 200, we added a marketing person to help with our agencies. We added an IT person to help understand how to translate technology and get discounts and leverage us to help agencies. We're looking at right now a trainer to really help agencies. We have a agency coordinator that really understands carriers and helps them with the onboarding process. We have an onboarding specialist that helps them get onboarded with us, but also helps them when they purchase a book. I mean, they do acquisitions. So like every, milestone that we make as a group comes with a consideration of how do we help keep independence independent, but also help them leverage their books so they behave the way that larger agencies do, and they can compete at that level, and we can maintain this, the agencies that are more community driven type of agencies.
Yeah, that's what was so striking to me, really, was the support. And it's not just that I have one or two people that are here to help answer your questions. it's specialized.
Mhm.
It's with the technology and marketing and onboarding, and that was very unique to me for somebody that might be looking, to go independent. And it's not just, oh, here's your markets,
Mhm.
good luck, and then just go ahead and, we're going to deduct this amount from your check every month. It's a support and it's a community, and that's what I think is very unique in within the industry. And on the, every network, there's going to be some sort of contribution. I just felt like your amount and your structure is very fair for what you're offering. So it's just for anybody that's thinking about looking at a network, I'd look at CLI if they're a state that you operate in. On that, something I thought about while you were talking, when you took over, how many agents were in the network?
8.
8.
8. There's 8 of us.
And so now it's just shy of 80.
Yeah, but in 2018 we were at 20. So we started 2019
Okay.
actually with 22, I think. I would add
Wow.
2. I'd be like, hey, I think you're like you fit within our tribe, and then we bring somebody in. And then I was focused on my book. So I mean, I needed to grow as a leader, not just for our
Yeah.
agencies, but also for my agency. I needed to learn a lot of lessons of how to run an agency. Because, like you said, I took over the group, 4 years after I went independent. So I was still learning on what would work within my agency. And the cool part is I got to use CLI to leverage relationships with technology, with carriers, and test it
Yeah.
out within my agency before. And then this is the advantage for the agents too, is that we are able then to put that out to the other agencies and show them that this wasn't just a decision that was made and just saying, yeah, sure, we'll take this carrier, or sure, we'll take this technology. This was tested within a
Yeah.
real live agency and shown like how you really could use the technology or use that carrier to be successful with them. And if it wasn't, then that was one that we didn't launch out.
Yeah. So I know that you do some vetting for agencies. What kind of things do you look for when you're vetting an agent or an agency?
Yeah, we make them put together a business plan.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of times agencies, they will go into the independent arena and they will not have a business plan and a financial plan,
Hmm.
showing how they're going to make it. Because the first couple of years, it's liberating if you've been captive before,
Yeah.
but it is freaking hard.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. My team's not. We're going to tell you need a financial plan and you need to figure out like how that looks. We can help you with that. We have templates for,
Yeah.
agencies to look at on like what you're going to need to know. Because when you go independent, like I said, it was awesome to have the carriers and be able to write some of the things for my clients I couldn't do before. But on the other hand, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that's where we come in and we try and like go, hey, these are going to be the things that have been pain points for agencies that have started out. And you're going to have to hustle the first couple of years. And I think sometimes when a captive goes from captive to independent, they get the comfort zone of, they have a steady book and they're comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And then it's like they get to being independent and they're like, oh, that's right. I have to hustle. That's been a long time since I've gone in and done the hustling that you have to do.
Yeah. You know what? And I don't know. I know I mentioned you before. I really don't know that much about networks. I'm not a part of one. And so I've never really taken the time to look into one. But I think that the financial plan is
Mhm.
just as important, if not more important,
Mhm.
because something that I've always, and I haven't gotten that detailed, but I've always went over with people, essentially, it's more of an informal financial plan, because how
Mhm.
are you going to make it?
Yeah.
How are you going to make it in 6 months? Who's going to pay for your rent or
Mhm.
whatever it is? So I think that's extremely wise. I wonder how many other networks do that. Maybe not many.
I'm not sure. I
Yeah.
think the vetting side for us, I mean, it's a fit on both sides. It has to
Yeah.
fit. the person that's looking to join us, but it has to fit us too. So we ask them to interview and ask any question from 3 of our agencies that we feel are either in their area, or or they've been with us for a long time, or they may have come from a captive carrier that's similar to the one that they're leaving. We ask them to talk to them and ask any question that they want to ask, so that they know beforehand. So then they're also connecting with other people within the tribe. So that's important for us right off from the bat. And then they're getting to know them. I do find sometimes I've heard that other groups, they don't even let them talk to one another sometimes. So they don't have that community. So we want to make sure from the get-go, like, do you want to be a part of community, right? Are you afraid of change? Are you afraid of innovation? Do you work well with others? Those are vetting things when you ask questions. And how open are you? If somebody's not willing to be open when it's good about things, then they're definitely not going to be open when things are going badly. And we are not mind readers. Sometimes when agencies don't do well with us, they don't tell us they're not doing well. So then there's all these things they think and assume we should be doing for them, and we don't know. So because we like to keep them independent and let them do their stuff too. It's their agency, own their book 100%. So communication is key. I try in a lot of ways. My team tries in a lot of ways to figure out the best way to communicate. I don't think there's any foolproof way of communicating to the masses. But we just sure try, because I think that's where the breakdowns come sometimes. On the vetting, but also sometimes on once an agency joins, and that's never our intentions. So we're really transparent. We share all of our carrier reports, so our agencies know exactly how we're performing as a group, which is kind of unique.
For someone that is looking to join a network, what are some things that they should be looking for when they join? Because I think that many agents, or especially many captives, it's so new, it's so different. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know what to ask. You're just happy that I have 20 markets to work with. Sign me up. What sorts of things should they be looking for when they're looking to join a network?
I love this question, because I love talking to agencies, even if they're for example, Florida is not a state that we want agencies. So I don't mind having a conversation with an agent in Florida that says, hey, I'm looking at groups and what should I think of? And I'm like, I will absolutely tell you all of the ins and outs and the things to look for. And they're not good or bad. They're just what is going to work for you, right? So make sure you understand the contract really, really well. Is there a buy-in? Is there a buyout? And in that buyout, is there any limitations on the carriers? So some of the contracts that are out there, you can leave the group, but you can't have a contract with the carriers that you had with them for 2 years. And so you really can't leave, right? And some of them have a time limitation, as far as some of them are 15 years. That you have to be with them for 15 years before you leave, right? And so people get excited because they see the markets and they're like, oh, I want all these, and they don't read really what it is. And so really read through the contract. I don't mind ever, and I think hire somebody if they question our contract. If they have questions about it, then I know they're reading through it. And so then we can have a conversation, and they may have an assumption that in the contract the wording means this, but they haven't been in the space of being independent, so they really don't understand how that really works. So I'm like, hey, thank you for your question. We'd love to go through this with you. So here's how this works and how this pertains in the contract. So let's go through it. And then if you don't have clarity after I answer this question, please keep asking more questions until we get to a point that I've answered your question in its entirety. So that's really, really important when you're putting, that out there with it. I would also say profit share. How does profit share work, and what does that look like? But then one of the things that a lot of agencies don't know about is that the groups can negotiate for overrides if the group hits a level, and most groups don't share it. So ask them about overrides, if that's something that is shared, or if there's overrides and the group keeps it. So I know other groups that they don't like me talking about that. So, but we share it 100%. So like
Yeah.
for me, it was like, I didn't know I was like giving a secret away that groups generally
Yeah.
don't give those type of overrides away. There's commission increases, which are different than overrides. So if you hit a certain level with some of the carriers, you get a higher commission. That is different than an override. So that's something I try to always talk to them. Ancillary benefits, like we've talked about, like, do they have an onboarding person? What does that process look like for you? Do they have, other people, like we have a marketing person, a technology person? How does training work? What does this look like for you as a whole? And what does your agency look like when you get bigger too? So
Yeah.
I see so many agencies that sign a contract and it looks awesome for them when they're under $1 million with a premium. And then once they go over that $1 million with premium, they're like, "Ooh, this doesn't quite work the way I thought it would work,"
Yeah.
right? So plan to be successful instead of planning to be short term, because they're making a long term decision based on a short term pain point that they want to solve. And then the last thing is you don't need 20 carriers.
Right.
How do you memorize the underwriting and product guidelines of 20 carriers? You don't, right?
No.
10 is like a max, is how I feel like if you're new. A
Oof.
10 is max. 7 is a sweet spot,
Yeah.
is as far as
Agreed.
like the high end, I feel like. So that is a misnomer. They get in there and they go, I want to carry, I want to carry, I want to carry, I want to carry, I want to carry. And they just get so excited about it, which I understand that. But then your book is so spread thin, you're so spread thin, and then you're not really effective the way you need to. And then you still, even with your group, they still want to see that you're giving them opportunities, to have business, even if you're not writing business with them. So you may lose those carriers because you can't feed them in the beginning. So it's better to get really strong with a core group of
Yeah.
carriers, about five. Like I said, in seven's like the most or the sweet spot. I look at 5 national carriers and then having, 2 regionals, and you should be good.
Yeah. Agreed.
I know that was a lot. I was
Yep.
like I
That
said,
was a lot. That was
I
great.
have very like big thoughts on that.
That was great. And you did touch on some of these, I think. On the reverse side, what should agents absolutely look out for? You mentioned a buyout.
Hmm.
What other kinds of things are you should strongly or maybe it's a hard pass if you see one or two of these things in a contract?
uh, I would say non-competes and non-solicitations. Watch out for the wording of that, especially the
Yeah.
non-solicitation. So get a lawyer to look at it. I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to tell
Yeah.
you, like we tell agencies, like if they have questions about some of that, go through it with your lawyer, then come back to us and take a look at that. I would say ownership of the book. Some of them
Mm,
spell out that they do not own their book. It does, and they're given the impression that they do own their book, and they really don't, and they're really set up as not a member of the group with their own agency, but they're really set up more of like a producer
yeah.
than an
Yeah.
actual agency owner. So you've got to watch, that. But I mean, there's a lot of great contracts and a lot of great groups out there.
Yeah.
There are some contracts through the years where it's really hard. It's disheartening for me when I talk to an agency and I have to tell them, like, you're stuck
Yeah.
because you had a short term
Yeah.
mentality in the beginning and you didn't vet out all these things. So that's why I'm very vocal about, like, hey, read these things, look over that, make sure you truly understand what it is. And I never take it as a slight. And if we're not a fit for somebody, we're not a fit for
Yeah.
somebody. It's okay. It's totally okay. And if they're not a fit for us, I always say, hey, like, I don't think we're going to fit what you're looking for. But if I think they're an awesome person, I'm like, can we stay in contact and be colleagues? Like, if you need something, reach out to us. And so I have a lot of people that are not a part of our group that we still talk. I mean, we still get together and we still, help one another.
Yeah. Let's pivot to Dawnyel, the agency owner. So you can take your network hat off for a second and throw the agency owner hat on. Um, how are you spending your time as the principal of your agency? Because I know you're still involved.
Mhm.
It's not just working on the business, but how are you spending most of your time on the agency side of things?
I've really taken myself out of the quoting side and mainly most of the presenting side with my team. And for me, my job is to give us more opportunities of business coming in. I don't have a team of producers. I have a huge group of what we call referral partners. And so, like health brokers, they'll bring in commercial clients to us and we'll team together. We work with payroll companies, so we'll lead with workers' comp a lot of times. We've worked with mortgage companies for, the personal side. I have commercial lenders that we work with and we have partnerships with them. So, my job is to make sure I am showing that I appreciate our partners and that I am helping their teams and their businesses. So, like we've sponsored appreciation events where it spotlights the referring partner more than us. And so we're a part of that.
Yeah.
And so I spend a lot of time in that. And then our larger clients, I do like going through the risk management. We have some really cool risk management tools that we use for larger clients. And I love being a part of those presentations. So I talk to them from a business owner aspect. My team is really awesome talking about coverage and going through it and their options, but they will they will not connect with the owner the way that I will, because I will use my business as a case in point of, in my business, this is a
Yeah.
tool that is important because X, Y, and Z. So I do a lot of that. We have our C2Cs, which is collaboration to creation. And so I spend time with the team on Tuesdays. We go over processes and partners. So we'll go over and your processes. You shouldn't just do one and done. You need to make sure you're always changing them and tweaking them and refining
Yeah.
them, and that your team has a say in how they are being written, because they are doing it every day. They know better than you. So
Yeah.
let them, be the authors of that. And then partners, it may be technology, it may be carriers, and they come in and they work with the team. And then on Thursdays, which is like today, actually, we are doing our sales team meeting, which is our big one, because we meet every Thursday talking about opportunities that we have
Mm.
and large renewals, and making sure everyone's on the same page with the book of business that they are managing, whether it be personal lines or commercial lines. And so the big one once a month is we go through our numbers. We know how much new business we have. We know how much business that we have lost. We know how much business for renewals has gone up or down, because sometimes you do really well on renewals. And sometimes you have some
Yeah.
years where you may lose a big, large client, you may go backwards. And so
Yeah.
we look at what the net growth is for the team. And we do it visually in front of everybody. And we do it by their books of business. So they each have retention levels by their book of business too. And so we talk about it every month, and we have it in front of them. And then we set team goals with it. And then, like, one of the things I'm doing today in it that we added was we wanted to get a lot more standalone cyber with our clients.
Mm.
And so I'm running the book of business that we have with standalone cyber. And then I'm doing a quarterly for next quarter. We are going to write as much cyber as we have on the books now in 3 months. So we're doing a push on a product
Okay.
together as a team. And then there's an incentive and a game that we're playing with it as a team.
Who do you write your cyber through
Um,
typically?
it's, we do a lot with Cowbell.
Okay.
Yep, we like the product line. I like their dashboard. It's really easy to show a client what it looks like and how it could impact them. And especially if you have like a franchise and you want to push it down to the franchisees, it's a good product to be able to do that compared to other products that are out there. And the coverage, you can add cyber, on your BOP,
Yeah.
um, but it's not giving them what they need. So we're
No.
really trying to do a push on monoline cyber and getting the clients to understand the difference.
I was introduced to Pro Writers Lab a year ago. I was just
Mhm.
really impressed. I was really happy with them. So I've been using them for the last year. That's kind of a push of mine for 2023 is to really target cyber. It's probably a
Mhm.
product that is the most undersold, I would
Mhm.
say, in the market. I should have referenced earlier that you are majority commercial lines,
Yes.
right? I mean,
Mhm.
what is your split? I know you do some personal, but very, very little. Is
It's
that
interesting. I was
right?
like at 95, and then I bought a personal lines book. So I'm like at 80 now, but
Yeah, okay. So
so
literally you didn't
it
do
kind
much.
of goes
Okay.
like, but I've done a roller coaster, right? So
Yeah.
like I started off being 80% commercial, 20% personal lines, and then '08 happened and I had a construction book. And so then I
Mhm.
needed to tweak it. So I bought some
Yeah.
more books, and then I was 80% personal lines and 20% commercial. So I've done this like
Yeah.
up and down, like of what it really is. I appreciate personal lines for what it can do for families and protecting them, but talking to business owners, it gets me excited because
Yeah.
I understand what they're going through as a business owner, and I learn so much from them on what they are trying to accomplish, and sometimes like even just software. Like talking to my business owners and saying, I'll ask them like, what software are you using that's making you feel like you have an edge out there compared to your competitors, right? And they'll share what they're using and how they're using it. And then it may not be something that's readily used within our industry, but you could go and steal it, right? And use it for your purposes. And so now you have an edge because it's a software
Yeah.
or technology or system or process that's not common within our industry, but maybe more common in a different industry. And especially like we have a tech and cyber niche. So like I'm gonna ask the techie people, like, what are you using?
Yeah.
And how are you using it? And then like I remember when we first started doing automations and stuff like that. And my husband's an IT guy. So like
Okay.
he's like, it's called conditional, and you just need to go if that, then this, and then like he put it into layman's
Yeah.
terms for me, and like trying to teach me how to first do automation, and so it helps because we outside resources are amazing.
Yeah. I mean, that's where your passion is for the
Hmm.
business side of things, right? So that's what we're supposed to do is follow our passions.
Hmm.
Tell me on the agency side some mistakes you've made along the way. You touched on one as being a leader and coming in guns blazing, but what are some other mistakes that you've made along the way?
Oh gosh, we could spend like 100
Yeah.
hours on this. To be honest, I would say acquisitions. I
Okay.
didn't know
Oh.
what I was doing when I did my first acquisition, and I should have broken down the book more than I did. I would say I didn't know the numbers I needed to know.
Hmm.
So if you're going to do an acquisition, either hire a firm or get with somebody that really has done quite a few acquisitions so you
Yep.
can understand. I hate hearing that people are like, oh yeah, I'm going to get like 12 times on my book and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, is it revenue? Is it
Yeah.
EBITDA? Like, and they don't understand that, but they're going to get 12 times. Like, and
Right.
so you're going to have to dig in and you're going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable with the fact that you know nothing about
Yeah.
acquisitions, and then get with somebody that actually you trust that can help you with it. And so I learned by trial and error and fire and
Yeah.
like, yeah, it was awful. Don't do
No,
that.
that's a
Like,
good one.
mm-hmm.
I mean, that's an important one for all of us, especially for people that are considering that. That's a good one.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like timing with acquisitions. Like,
Yeah.
is this the time for you to do an acquisition? Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Are you prepared? Do you have the process
Mm-hmm.
in place? Are you taking over a staff? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
So many unknowns and questions.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. You're just looking at, oh, I'm going to add this 7 million in premium. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
again, you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah.
and then you muddle your way through it. That's a good one. Any other mistakes you can think of along the way?
I
I mean,
would
there's a
say
bunch, but
uh, not having the processes and procedures in place that I had made with the team.
Yeah.
Like a dictatorship is, I think, what I established at one point in time. And so, like, don't do that. You will put this in this order, and this is how it's going to be. And the control freak in me is like, I like to do it this way, so we're going to do it exactly this way, and then no input from anybody. Like, that's a horrible thing to do to
Yeah.
your team, right? And me, I'm just like, I don't want to spend the time trying to explain it to you or why I think this is how it needs to be done, but this is how we're going to do it. And then I realized I wasn't as smart as I thought I was in regards to processes and procedures, and especially ones that I wasn't in every day
Yeah.
anymore. And that maybe I should listen to some people that have experience in it far greater than mine, right? And the people who are actually working in it, because
Yeah.
sometimes things change, software
Yeah.
changes, people changes, covers changes, like all kinds of things change. And so, like, be adaptable with your team in regards to processes and procedures and give them some ownership in it too.
When did you start to adopt literally written processes? It wouldn't surprise me if you said from day one. Is that the answer?
Um, I brought over people with me, so there was
Okay.
some stuff. It was some small stuff we had as little tiny
Yeah.
procedures of how we were going to do stuff. We had a sales cycle, but nothing like we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of us peasants over here that, again, we're sales driven. We were sales driven people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's, hey, let's get it in the door. We'll figure out everything else later. That's what I did and what a lot of people did. And then it's much harder. But
Yeah, my first year, I actually had for every type of policy, because I was still paper, like starting my first year, right? And I had it from when I was captive, is that I had a little checklist slip that was like a third of a paper that had all the steps of everything that was important to make sure that was done before that file was sold.
wow.
And that's how I did it before. But now we have an electronic checklist in our management system that goes through
Beautiful.
that.
Um, what advice would you have for scratch agents that are early in their career?
I would say find somebody super successful in the industry and start with them. Ask them, that you admire, that you think
Mm,
has the same type of personality. Don't find somebody that you're like, hey, they're super successful, and then when you talk to them, you're like, they are a total asshole.
yeah.
Like, don't find that person. Find the person that you can connect with, that's going to be really real with you,
Yeah.
that's going to say, I totally screwed up some stuff. This is what I did. Start with them and then say, is there anybody else that you feel like you've learned a ton from, right?
Yeah.
And talk to a couple of them and learn some things that you say from this person. Here are these are three things that I would want to copy
Yep.
from them. Here are three things that I don't want to go down that path that they did, and then apply it to the plan that you are putting for your agency on how to implement the start and stop or don't do of what you've learned from each person, because they're going to give you an idea of it, and give you an idea of what you might need to do, and find the people that, like I said, are going to be super honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Um, Danielle, I view you as a leader in our industry space for sure. I'm It's inspiring to see all the things that you're involved in handling, um, with running a network, running an agency, writing a book, involved in councils. How do you manage all of your time?
So I like to have everything in front of me. um, and I still like the tangibility of paper, even though I'm paperless, right? Like, you try to be,
Yeah.
but there's still
Yeah.
stuff on your desk. I have to have some type of planner that I do my Sunday planning,
Okay.
but so I can see where I'm spending my time. I have at home so my family can see where I
Mm,
am spending my time, and when it is time that I am focused on them, when it's time that I need to be focused on my work, when it's time that I need to be focused on me. And then they get the same opportunity to do that for themselves too on the family calendar.
Mm.
And so it's a whole year. It's a huge white erase thing in our pantry. And so they can see exactly when to look forward to vacations as a family. And that's our blocking our time as a family to connect. And then we have a schedule for us to spend time one-on-one with the kids. So it's a lot of like, anytime I get out of like doing that, like life becomes this really bad, like, I don't know, this little like, merry-go-round.
Yeah.
And I'm just going around in a circle and I get off of it and I get dizzy and I'm like, okay, you're right. Don't get on the merry-go-round. Like you have a plan. Like you're just going to go in circles. So I try to really stick to that so that I'm really mindful of where I'm spending my time, and don't spend your time on focusing on the things that went wrong and just digging that hole. You're wasting time. So then go, what is my lesson that I have learned and how am I going to do it different? And if you need to, put it on a sticky in front of you so you can stop thinking about it, and you put the action of like what you're going to be doing now. So on that sticky is like, this is the proactive thing that I'm now going to do. I'm not going to go and wallow and be a martyr and be a victim and live in that merry-go-round too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't get on the victim merry-go-round either.
Stay off the victim merry-go-round.
Right. And so I think once you do that, you free yourself up for better energy. You also
Yeah.
free yourself up in regards to time. It's amazing how much time you have if you stop doing that. So I think that's how I manage it. And sometimes it gets out of whack. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
I'm spending way too much time at work, and then sometimes I have a lot of time dedicated to my family, and work needs to be set over here. And
Yeah.
sometimes I need a place to go so I don't lose my shit
Yeah.
and take time for me.
I wonder that in looking at all that you handle, do you ever ask yourself, oh, I think I jumped into too much. I this is I need to take one thing off my plate.
Mm-hmm. Oh
Yeah.
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 I did that. I was on like 12 councils at one
Yeah, you
point.
said, I know that when I mentioned 7, I
Yeah.
failed to mention that's down from 12.
It is. And it was realistic that it was I felt like I couldn't be as focused as I wanted to for the councils. But I felt really passionate of helping our carriers because they're
Yeah.
super important to us and we want to be a good partner. And then I was like, well, there's people on my team that could do this too, just as well as I can. So why am I not handing that opportunity over to them? And sometimes it's hard because sometimes they want the owner, they don't want your
Yeah.
team to go on the council. So, some of them I had to just say I couldn't do anymore.
Yeah.
Which
You
I
have
felt like
to.
I was letting them down. And so, but I needed to be realistic on how much energy and time could I put forth because they're making an investment in us whenever you're doing a council as well.
Yeah. Well, hopefully people can understand with what the demand for your time is. You just can't be in 30 different places, and
Mhm.
you're going to have to say no. You're not only a leader in our insurance space. I think you've taken a leadership role with empowering women in our leadership space. What was it, that made you decide to, start up is it called WIISE? Is that
Mhm.
okay?
Women in Insurance Sharing Empowerment.
Yeah. And I don't think that's the only thing that you're involved with empowering women. What made you get in or develop that program?
There was a number of factors that made me want to do it. I would say a memory that I can remember is, I did go to a networking group and it was for women in the industry and included financial services. And I felt like it wasn't the right fit for me. But I also have this memory of my first council, and I was the first female ever on that council, and it was a 100-year-old company.
Mm.
And then I was like, well, maybe they're just different, right? And maybe this is not what it's like. And then I get on my next council, and I was like, oh, I'm again the only female. And they had females before, but there wasn't very much of us in leadership. And so I feel like if people don't see people that are like themselves in positions, then they don't imagine that they could do that too. And so I really wanted to spotlight, and we do with WIISE Woman of the Week, women who are stepping up to those type of tables and being a part of the conversations and not being afraid to take the risk to say, hey, I would love to be a part of that. And so I'd like to encourage, women to take those risks and be able to show women that are actually doing that. So we do a lot of work with that. We do a lot of speaking events. We do summer retreats with women too, and really helping them, lift each other up and not push each other down. Acknowledging men that are helping women in their careers, because that's important too. I wouldn't be here today, like case in point, Ken saw something in me, right?
Yeah.
Who started CLI. So I'm here because of the men and women that have been in my life, that have helped me be brave sometimes when I didn't want to stand up and say, I want to do that.
Yeah. In your time in the industry, do you feel that the things have improved for women?
Oh, heck yeah. The last 10
Yeah.
years definitely has. I've
Yeah.
seen a huge difference in the last 10 years. So I'm excited about that. I think it's a generational thing too. I think overall, it's not just our industry, but I think there's a lot more acceptance of women in the workplace as, a big contributor to the economics. And, we're a large part of the workforce within our industry is female, but there's still not enough of us taking leadership roles. And so it's really cool. I just had a lunch with one of our agencies, CSRs, and she's trying to, like, she didn't think she'd ever go into insurance, and she chose it, as a position that she wanted to start with this company. And she's been with them for a couple of years. And it was really cool to talk to her about her taking the leap into a producer role.
Yeah.
And doing that, right? And then helping her see that for herself and be able to help that journey of it. And those are the type of stuff that is just really cool to be a part of it. And I feel very honored when I am. And then I get to talk to other women too, that it's like, hey, I have this challenge. How do I handle it? And it happens to be perceptions of me or, another female, and be able to help them, find the solution that is going to help them propel themselves forward.
Yeah. That's great. Hey, I know we're up against a time frame here, so I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you very much for joining me today. You gave so much good information. It was an absolute pleasure spending time with you again today. For everyone else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agents to Owners podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye, Dawnyel.